Oh, hey there. So there are currently 898 different Pokemon, but with the upcoming 9th generation, Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet, that number is probably going to be well over 1,000. So I thought it'd make the most sense to hyperfixate on one of them. Or, well, technically 6 of them, because I want to talk about how utterly weird the Slowpoke line is. Slowpoke first appeared in Pokemon Red and Blue, or Red and Green if you were in Japan. Coming in at number 79 in the Pokedex, it's a water psychic type, and according to its original Pokedex entry, is incredibly slow and dopey, taking up to 5 seconds to feel pain. On a competitive level, Slowpoke has a pretty good type coverage, but it does come in as the slowest psychic type Pokemon in the first generation. At level 37, it evolves into Slowbro. Now, this is where things get a little weird. We're told that a Slowbro is really just a Slowpoke with a Shellder on its tail. However, that doesn't look like a Shellder to me. In fact, it looks closer to a Cloyster. But not even Cloyster has eyes on the outside of its shell. So that begs the question, what is this creature and why are we told that it's a Shellder? Secondly, how come I don't have to have a Shellder on my team to evolve a Slowpoke? Where did this Shellder even come from? There's definitely something fishy going on here. Now in Generation 2, stick with me here because we're going to blow this whole thing wide open. But in Generation 2, we learned that Team Rocket has been cutting off Slowpoke tails and selling them for a profit. This seems rather inhumane. However, according to numerous Pokedex entries, when a Slowpoke gets its tail bit, or even when it breaks off, it doesn't really feel any pain. And in fact, the tail grows back rather quickly. Now with that information in mind, I would like to fast forward just a little bit to Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon. That's right, I'm talking about the Alola region. As we venture around the islands of Alola, we learn that people here eat Slowpoke tail quite frequently, making Slowpoke tail quiche and Slowpoke tail sandwiches. They even dry and smoke the Slowpoke tail. So that begs the question, what was Team Rocket doing that was so wrong back in Azalea Town? Speaking of Azalea Town, this is where the King's Rock can be found, down in the Slowpoke well. Using a King's Rock on a Slowpoke, it'll evolve into a Slowking. But now we're told that a Shellder has instead bit onto this Pokemon's head, and by doing so, released a chemical that improves its intelligence. However, I must point out yet again, where did the Shellder even come from? Was the King's Rock a Shellder? But that can't be the case because we use the King's Rock on other Pokemon as well. So what does the King's Rock have to do with a Slowpoke's evolution? It just doesn't make sense. Stick with me though, because we're about to blow this whole thing wide open. In the Galar region, we're introduced to a regional variant of Slowpoke, aptly named Slowpoke. You'll notice there's a physical difference between these two Slowpokes, as one is pink and the other is pink, but looks kind of sick. Another key difference here is that Slowpoke is no longer water type, it's pure psychic type. This is important, but it's all gonna add up soon. No longer does Slowpoke evolve by level, but it does still evolve. In Sword and Shield, you can evolve a Slowpoke with either the Galarica Cuff or the Galarica Wreath. The Cuff evolves into Slowbro, but this time the Shellder is bit onto its hand. You'll notice this because the Shellder is on its hand. But I want you to pay close attention to its typing. Poison Psychic? Where did the poison come from? If Shellder, a water type Pokemon, bit onto the hand of Slowpoke, a psychic Pokemon, what caused it to become poison? But even more importantly, where did the Shellder come from? And even more importantly is why is the Shellder standing up? We were told that when a Shellder bites onto the tail of a Slowpoke, it acts as a counterbalance, and that is what makes it so the Slowbro stands on its back legs. If a Shellder bit onto the hand of a Slowpoke, then wouldn't it be weighing it down back onto all fours? It just doesn't add up. But it doesn't stop there. Stick with me because we're about to blow this whole thing wide open. Galarian Slowking, look at it. Look at this monstrosity. If you pay close attention, notice that Shellder has taken over the entire head of this poor Slowpoke. Now again, I must ask, where did this poison typing even come from? But that's not the most important thing here. The eyes. Look at the eyes. Those are not Slowpoke's eyes. Those are Shellder's eyes. In fact, one could assume that Shellder is in full control here. Look at this thing. Why do we call this thing Slowking? What did Slowpoke do to deserve naming priority if every single Slowpoke evolves using another Pokemon? What did he do? What did Slowpoke do to deserve naming priority? What would happen if a Shellder bit onto the back left foot of a Slowpoke? What would it evolve into then? And in fact, what would happen if a Shellder ate the entire Slowpoke? Wait, That's happened? Mega Slowbro? Okay, stick with me, because we're about to blow this whole thing. In fact, one could assume that Shellder is in full control here. What is it about In fact, one could assume that Shellder is in full control here. So why are we still calling this thing Slow King? Why don't we call it something involving It's so hard to do this. I'm sorry, puppies. I'm not yelling at you.